Governors Island was initially much smaller than it is today. It had many islets along its shoreline and groups of hardwood trees from which the island's native name is derived. There is insufficient evidence as to whether the Governor Islands contained any permanent Lenape settlements or was used mainly for hunting and gathering. In 1524, the explorer Jumani was one of the first Europeans to observe what was then called Fegang. 100 years later, in May 1624, Northern Ireland was a landing place of the first settlers in New Netherlands. They departed from Amsterdam in the Dutch Republic with the ship New Netherland under the command of Cornelius May and disembarked on the island with 30 families in order to take possession of New Netherland territory. For this reason, the New York State Senate and Assembly recognized Governors Island as the birthplace of the state of New York and also certified the island as the place on which planting of the legal political guarantee of the tolerance onto the North American continent took place. In 1633, the fifth director of New Netherlands would arrive with a 104 men regiment on Northern Ireland and later commanded the island for his personal use. He secured his farm by drawing up a deed on June 16, 1637, which was signed by two Lenape leaders. Situated at present-day New Jersey, Ben Twiller cultivated a farm on the island, even a building windmill on the land until he returned on to the Netherlands in 1642. The windmill was demolished possibly by 1648, and colonial governor burned it down after seeing it in inoperable condition. Following this, Northern Ireland is said to have been used as a recreation ground by the Dutch between 1652 and 1664. There is little other documentation on the use of the island during the Dutch colonial period, other than the fact it has remained in public ownership since Ben Trailer left New Netherlands. New Netherlands was conditionally ceded to the English in 1664, and the English renamed the settlement to New York in June 1665. By 1674, the British had total control of the island. At this point, the eastern shore of the island was separated from the Brooklyn by a shallow channel that could be easily traversed at a low tide. This became known as the Buttersmilk Channel, since the farm women would use the channel to travel to Manhattan Island in boats and sell buttermilk. By 1680, Northern Ireland contained a single house and a pursuit to be used by colonial governors for raising sheep, cattle, and horses. The British started calling Northern Ireland Governors Island in 1698 and reserved the island for the exclusive use of colonial governors. 4 years later, when Edward I. Lord Colonial took office as new colonial governor, he built a mansion on Governors Island, though evidence of this mansion no longer exists. Later, Governors Island Causeway used the island as a preserve to breed and hunt fish, and other governments leased out the islands for profit, and for a short period around 1710, Governors Island was designed as a quarantine station for German refugees arrived from England on their way to Germantown on the Hudson. Otherwise, Governors Island mostly remained untouched until American Revolution started in 1775. In September 2016, the Trust for Governors Island and the New York City Economic Development Corporation started an online survey to develop ideas for Governors Island as a year-round destination. 2 years later, Mayor Blasio opened a formal process to rezone the remaining undeveloped portion of Governors Island for dormitory, office, or educational use. Proposed rezoning to opposition from activists who wanted Governors Island to be kept large as is. Also, in 2018, the city's government held the NYC Governors Island Connectivity Challenge, asking 3 companies to test out 5G technology on Governors Island. If the project successful, the city's governance would pursue a wide rollout of 5G in New York City. The Lower Manhattan Cultural Council's expanded art center at Governance Island opened in September 2019 in a renovated former ordnance warehouse at the north end of the island. A new art center features gallery, exhibition, and performance space, as well as studio areas for up to 40 artists. The opening of the Artist Center added LMCC to the island's community of year-round tenants, which also include Billion Oyster Project, an organization to restore New York Harbor oyster population and biodiversity. The Urban Assembly New York Harbor School, a high school focused on maritime vocational education, and QCNY, a destination day spa. In October 2019, city official proposed constructing a climate change research center on the island. In March 2020, the Task for Governance Island issued a request for proposal seeking arts and culture organizations to become year-round tenants in two historic buildings in Noland Park. During 2020, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic in New York City, the island opened 2 months later than usual, and a time ticketing system limited daily visitation of up to 5,000. In September 2021, Mayor Blasio announced that the island would operate year-round rather than from May through October. Though there were no full-time residents at the time, the Trust for Governance Island started spending nighttime access to the island following the announcement. Additionally, two organizations announced plan to host about a dozen residents by 2022. The QCNY spa opened inside a former barracks on the north side of the island in March 2022, and Gitano Island Beach Club opened that July. In April 2023, the Trust for Governance Island selected Stony Brook University to construct a 400,000 square foot climate research lab on the island, which was planned to cost $700 million and be complete in 2028. The trust announced plans in 2024 to convert Building 140 into a restaurant and event space, and the new harbor began an expansion that year.